right, let's get this thing started. We're doing our deep dive on Daniel podcast, and we do have with us today a guy named Daniel, the Daniel from the Bible Times. He's actually, no, it's just Daniel, my friend. Daniel Riccio. What was that?
I'm just that old.
He's that old. Daniel is here, and Dalton, as always, is in the back seat.
Hello.
What's the temperature like in the back seat there, Daniel or Dalton?
73 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. I'm looking right there. Yeah.
And we are doing video. If you're listening to podcasts, it's cool. You're not missing anything with the video. But if you want, we are doing video now.
Don't say that.
YouTube. You're missing everything.
You're missing so much.
Yeah, you're missing everything.
Yeah.
Daniel and I are sitting in the basement of the church underneath the sanctuary. He's in a chair. I'm on a love seat, full couch. And we're getting ready to get into some serious stuff. I joked on Sunday about this being like a 7-hour podcast, and it very well could be. But to kick things off, Daniel, you are named Daniel. Why are you named Daniel?
I actually don't know the story behind how my parents picked my name. I do know my name means vindicated, God is my judge.
Oh, serious.
Which at different times in my life, that's meant something. It's been cool. Kind of a, hey, don't try and justify myself in certain situations, but just trust the Lord in certain things. And that's been meaningful in my life at different times. So,
you know why you're called Dalton?
Sorry, I was adjusting a camera.
Busted.
It's just my grandpa's name.
Oh, cool.
And it's like a Southern name, too.
Just my grandpa's name. It is.
It's my grandpa's name. My dad would not like that I said, it's just my grandpa's name. Yeah. No, he was an important guy.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I'm named David, and I actually don't know the story. I'm David. My brothers are Peter and John, so definitely seriously churchy Bible family parents. But yeah, David means beloved, and it's been times where, like you said, maybe there was more to it. Maybe the Lord was involved in that naming process, not just my mom and dad, but yeah. Our kids, we went hardcore with our kids' names. We got Alethea Reese, which means strong in the truth. And then we got Bella Rafa, which means beautiful healer. And then we got Evangeline Glenn, which means there's life in the valley. Very cool. And all three of them, it's so cool how it's like, it's direction for them. We've seen them in action. We've seen them do it all, but it's like, live into this. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah. And we both have daughters.
Daughters.
You have 2 daughters. I have 3 daughters.
Yep.
So we're the daughter dads. But we both have daughters who are graduating this year from high school.
That's right. Are they both is yours on a senior trip right now?
No.
Okay.
Ours opted out. Mine opted out.
Okay. Mine's at Disneyland right now.
Oh, wow. My nephew Luke just got back from a Disneyland trip, but is that with Northwest?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Giving too much information away for all the stalkers out there.
Oh, yeah.
But we haven't said her name.
Yes.
So we're safe. But yeah, they're graduating Thursday?
Friday's graduation.
Friday. Mine graduates on Thursday. It's very exciting. What are the feelings for you this week?
It's funny because we had done a picture every year of holding a sign saying what grade each girl was in side by side. So we have through the years, and the first years we didn't even have the sign. We just took pictures, and it's like I found the first day of school picture and then holding a sign saying 12th grade. And I was like, I put them in a text to my family and almost started crying. So it was just like, I can't believe it. But no, there's excitement.
Crying because of how old you are now?
Yeah. Except the tear ducts didn't even work right anymore. So
broke down. I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
I'm way more excited than my daughter. Way more excited than my wife. I don't know what this feels huge to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite why.
Yeah.
But I just, in some ways, like, I have this daughter that I care for so much who's graduating high school, and no huge bombs have gone off in her life at this point, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for that. And she's got a good head on her shoulders. She's thinking things through well. I mean, I know everything way better than her still. But she's starting to like think about real life stuff and even making some hard choices here and there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't be happier. Maybe I could be.
No, it's a super exciting thing to launch. This is what we've been doing for the past 18 years or whatever it's been to launch them off into life.
Yes.
It's literally your life's work.
It is. Right? It's the most important thing we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, well, congratulations to you.
You as well. Thank you.
Congratulations to me. Dalton, you have some little children.
I have a 2.5-year-old.
Keep up the work.
Someday we'll congratulate you.
I can't wait for graduation day. No, I'm just kidding.
But it's there is a sadness and a scariness of, oh no, what if she leaves?
Yeah.
What if she, finds something better than our family and goes and does that for a while?
We've been talking about rhythms of life, and, we do things in rhythms. We work, we play, we rest, we worship and repeat. And one of the new rhythms we're talking about is we go out, but then we gather, and starting that idea because she's going to go off to school in Kentucky.
Oh boy.
And so that's part of the sad, but we're excited for it. It's going to be an awesome experience, and
spread those wings.
That's right. And she actually sang a song in their last concert about spreading wings and whatever. So
you were crying big time?
No, I held it back. So, but
come on. Yeah. Well, anyways, getting into the book of Daniel, which has just been so rich for me. The Lord has taught me so much. The books I've been reading, the studying, the preparing the messages, the cutting all of the stuff that I've learned so much from off because I have to fit it into a 30-minute message or something. It's just been wonderful and guiding and, kind of stabilizing, I think, has been a big word for this study in Daniel. And it's been more than just a study in Daniel. Actually, Ryan kicked it off with Jeremiah because Jeremiah has 1 foot pre-exile, 1 foot in exile. Daniel's got both feet in exile for the most part, and we talked about his life story because he was born probably into the siege that was leading towards exile. And then actually, interesting enough, a little bit of a preview here, but this Sunday, Ryan will be teaching again on Ezekiel, because Ezekiel has both feet firmly in the exile, but is kind of, Daniel was half normal, half apocalyptic as far as his writings. Ezekiel is just full-on prophetic, out there, wild, awesome, interesting. So we're going to do that for a couple of weeks. I'm going to teach one on Ezekiel as well. And so I'm excited about that. But we're dialing into Daniel. And what I did on Sunday was I basically just tried to glean a few different directions or affirmations from angels that were given to Daniel in the midst of all these visions. So Daniel 7 through 12 is all Daniel's visions. Daniel would pray, receive a vision. Daniel was sitting by a river and all of a sudden saw this vision, which is the same thing that happened to Ezekiel. Daniel was, kind of angels were visiting him. There's all this type of stuff happening with Daniel. And so Daniel's basically sharing all of that stuff now, 7 through 12. And in there's these moments where the angel says something very specific or clear. And so we started out talking about the song, that there's the Lord's song. We talked about the singer and the world hater, and I read a little poem about that and how basically God's been singing this gospel song from the day we were born, and he's been singing it over us, and our whole sermon series has been phrased in the question, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And so we talked a little bit about the song. You have a favorite song?
No.
You have a favorite band?
No.
Dalton,
I'm
I know you
pretty
got something
boring
over
with
there.
Music.
I sure do. My favorite band is this band called the 1975.
I wasn't born yet.
I wasn't either.
I was born in 1975.
There you go.
Yeah?
Yes.
Well, you should check them out, man. Maybe they could be your jam.
Yeah, I don't think you'll like it.
Yeah, Dalton's got particular tastes. He likes what he likes.
I'm opinionated, is what that means.
Oh, is that what that means?
Oh, you didn't know.
But I appreciate your tastes.
Oh, thank you.
Likes and all those things.
Thank
but
you.
What was the last song you listened to?
Daniel? David McVicker and Gospel Song or Beckoning, one of those. So
hey, a little shout out to David McVicker,
Dude, Gospel
our worship
Song
pastor.
is a sleeper. I've been trying to get him to play that song at anything for ever, and he won't do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I like all
love
of
that
David
song.
McVicker.
Oh,
David
okay,
and Kitty
okay.
McVicker, they are good songwriters. But another shout out while we're doing it, Edwin A. on your podcast or on your streaming devices, he has just come out with a new single called "Admit It." And it was fun in staff meeting. I just, instead of people saying amen, I just kept saying, admit it. And Edwin was very embarrassed and telling me to stop, but I loved it, man.
We're in the presence of a future Grammy winner. Like, he's going to win a Grammy, for sure.
Yeah.
It's too much talent. Why is he here?
Why is he with us? We need to get the word out a little bit more about some of the good things that are coming out of some of the hearts and people here at Living Streams. But anyways, back to Daniel. We did the song. We talked about how do we sing the Lord's Song of Strange Land. Daniel was amazing at this. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, so amazing at this. And in this particular one, we dove into apocalyptic literature. So the last 5 chapters of Daniel and some other parts of Daniel and Ezekiel, which we're going into. A lot of apocalyptic literature. You like apocalyptic literature?
I find it very interesting, actually.
You do love it.
Yes. And
it's because your name's Daniel.
Yeah. Some of it is there's a really good usage of apocalyptic literature. And one of the things I know we tend to be enthralled with is the prediction of the future. And instead of focusing on the prediction of the future aspect, it's more of a lens to see the world through. And so seeing things through, this is the eternal value of the kingdom of Babylon. It's been weighed and found wanting, and its days are numbered. And so it starts to give you power over situations around you or things that seem insurmountable. You start to realize what the end of things is, and you start to go, oh, wait, I don't need to be so afraid. I don't need to be so scared. And doesn't make things easier. And one of the things about apocalyptic literature is the visions and things are pretty intense, and it's a way of also validating the pain people are suffering and saying, no, it's real pain. Those leaders, they are like beasts, and in the oppression that comes through them, it's is good. Horrible. But here's the thing that conquers it, and it's the long game, and it's what the Lord's up to, and it's his eternalness versus the temporary power of whoever happens to be invested with whatever power at the moment.
Now, it makes me think of that psalm where David is having a little bit of a day, a little bummed, and he's basically saying, why do the wicked prosper?
Psalm 73?
Boom. Yeah.
I was thinking of this one in advance because it was, his whole thing about, I almost stumbled because I was considering the evil, the wicked people, and how they get away with everything, and what's the point of living a righteous life. But then my perspective changed when I went to the sanctuary, and it was saying things.
What did he see in the sanctuary? He saw their end.
He saw their end, yes.
Which is apocalyptic literature. Yes. I mean, that's exactly, it's an unveiling of what the true story is.
Yes.
It's basically like putting on heaven's goggles and getting to see the reality, and it's just a bunch of beasts, it's just a bunch of chaos, but at the end there is a throne, and there is beauty, and there is light, and there is kingdom that lasts forever. And it's funny, I actually just experienced this when you were saying that. I went to a friend's house. Now track with me here. I went to a friend's house who's very, very wealthy. 2 Ferraris, Aston Martin, Maserati, and Cybertruck. Not just a Cybertruck, but he actually is one of the guys that his company designed the software for the Cybertruck. So this is like first, foremost, prime, beast, literally beast mode Cybertruck. And so I was with 2 friends, and I'm like the lower class of all the friends. So I sat in the back seat. No offense, Dalton. And they sat in the front seat. And we drove from his super nice house to a neighbor's house that he's friends with, which was just a little ways away. And we drove in the Cybertruck. So I've driven in a Cybertruck, by the way. And he stepped on it, and I was like pinned to the back. He actually warned me. He's like, "Hey, put your head against the headrest before I do this." I'm glad I did. It was intense. But then we drive. It's not far to this other guy's house, and we go to his house. We go in through the side gate, and it takes us right to the go-kart track and all of his electric go-karts. Then we're walking from in the backyard now, like past the go-kart track, which, by the way, the go-kart track actually goes under his pool at one point. But the pool is attached to a lazy river, which on the lazy river, there is one of those surf rider things, the white things you always see in people falling on Instagram. So it's like a surf rider thing he's got as a part of his pool, as a part of his lazy river. Then we walk past this other part, and the pool is actually 20 feet deep at one point. I'm not making this up.
Dude, you're making this up.
I am not making this up.
You're 1,000%.
No, listen to the detail. So it's a 20-foot deep part of the pool, which is an aquarium. There's an aquarium, and on the other side of the aquarium is his basement. So his basement is looking into the aquarium and also into the pool. And in the aquarium, there's black-tip sharks, small ones. I mean, they're only like 2 feet long, but they're black-tip sharks.
Angry black-tip sharks?
I don't know. They looked happy.
I'm waiting for David was standing by the pool with the black-tip sharks, and the angel called it. No,
track with me. We go inside the house, and he has one of those British telephone booths, those red ones, and it's on the 3rd floor of the house. When you type in a button, the bottom drops out, and it's a slide into the basement. They take me to this other side.
We
go through this kitchen. The house is nice, by the way. But we go through the kitchen to this other part, and the guy says, "Hey, you see that gong over there? Take this take the thing and hit the gong." I hit the gong, and the cabinet opens secret style, which is also another way to the basement. So then we go down to the basement, and we're in the basement, and he's got a basketball court down there, like not a full court, but like a half court. He's got there's the aquarium, the other side of the aquarium that you're looking in, and then he pulls. You know, Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, where he had to like lift that little statue thing off and put the bag to weight it so that the booby traps weren't coming
Raiders
at him.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sorry. So he has that same thing. When you move that, the whole staircase lifts up, and that's how you get into this garage where all the cars are. I'm not joking about anything. We get back in the Cybertruck and we blast off, literally, like warp speed. Actually, that's part of the software on the Cybertruck is when you do the like turbo thing, it shoots the lights like you're on Star Wars going into cyberspace or whatever. It's amazing. So we go back to the house, and then I go back to my house after all this. My pitiful, lame, horrible house. Not really. I mean, I love my house, but there was a little bit of a battle going in my heart of just going, because, you know, these guys are not following Christ. Actually, one of the guys hates Jesus. He told me that. The other guy was talking about how they love to go in that backyard, pop some gummies, and have the best time. And I was like, what kind of person needs to pop a gummy to have fun in this backyard? You guys must be so grown up or something like that. Like I was just joking with them, but yeah, they're definitely not, you know, following the Lord. Yeah. I don't know if I would call them wicked, but I think the Bible would. But yeah, I was just like, man, Lord, seems like they're prospering pretty good. And I don't know what, but then that verse came to mind. I was like, but Lord, yeah, I got you, and I know the end. Mm-hmm. The end is good. And I started praying for them that they would realize, and I know, you know, both of them, they've told me some of their stories, and that's part of the reason I'm there, is I'm trying to help them see a different way of living and all that. But it was cool to be comforted by those verses. And then I love that the advance on that is apocalyptic literature is wild and crazy, but it's putting things actually into a perspective that is true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, and it's funny, one of the analogies, and this is an imperfect metaphor, so from the start, it's imperfect, but the book 1984, which was written in 1948, if you read it as a prediction for what's going to happen in 1984, well, some of it actually fits. And but more recently, people have been selling T-shirts saying "Make 1984 fiction again," because there's things that were written in 1948 that are a really good way of looking at the world. This is how governments, just from studying human history and George Orwell, being part of, you know, living in India under the British Empire, seeing different things, and watching how governments work and going, yeah, you know, shots of vodka every hour, victory vodka, because we want the people to be numb. A ministry of truth, the group in the government that puts out what truth is for us. And like, without going down the list, there's things that in recent time, it's like, yes, gummies are legal because a numb people is, you know, one could argue the government wants a numb people. Or just, you know, it's a better way to do life, or this is how we're going to manage things. And it's like, wow, if you try and pin it all to it has to happen in the year 1984, you kind of go, ugh. And I think there's some parallels. And instead of this being studying human behavior, this is from the perspective of heaven. Let me show you what things look like and how things work. And let me show you what oppressive empires look like and coercive governments and things like that. And you go, oh, okay, that brings perspective.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into some of those specifics real quick in just a minute. Have you heard anything from Cat Williams?
No.
Dalton?
It's just like I'm just getting whipped around by you right now, you know? You're telling me I have friends with go-karts and sharks, and now you're like, you ever listen to Cat Williams?
This podcast, man, it's got to be interesting.
Yes, I have.
So Cat Williams.
New Cat Williams or old Cat Williams?
Well, the now Cat Williams.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So new, okay.
He's a comedian, and he's getting a lot of airtime on some big podcast type stuff. But he's actually got a fascinating kind of story of his life. But in my notes, which didn't make it into the sermon, I mean, they made it into my sermon notes, but didn't actually make it out there into the world. I put apocalyptic literature is a fun and wild thing, and Cat Williams and others are using it to promote some interesting ideas, but I think they're mostly unhelpful. So it's just so interesting because a lot of people today are they're troubled by what's happening in the world. They distrust the government. They really, a lot of the conspiracy theories seem to be having some grain of truth or maybe some, forbearance in reality, kind of like what was 1984, some stuff showing up like, what is going on? That seemed so ridiculous. Now it's seeming a little bit more normal. And so guys like Cat Williams and some others are starting to go, all the Bible's apocalyptic literature actually makes a lot of sense. And they're sort of trying to apply it to now times and days, which is so interesting because it's, again, Cat Williams, I'm not trying to say like we should listen to Cat Williams. Please don't hear me say that. But I just find it interesting in culture. In society, there's almost like a hunger for apocalyptic literature. But I think exactly like you said, it's because people are hurting.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of actual uncertainty. There's a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of fear about the future. And so apocalyptic literature is almost something that we access to help us get outside of this. And that's what's so cool about the biblical apocalyptic literature is because God knows we need that.
I think an aspect of that, I had a professor that used to say, if you're prophetic when you should be apocalyptic, you're being unfaithful. And he would say, if you're going into situations that are just, there's no this world reason for hope, and you're just offering this world reason for hope, hey, everything's going to be okay, it's fine. He said, you're being unfaithful. And I would tweak what he said a little. I think it's always good to come alongside people and speak encouragement and things like that. But I remember shortly after that talking to a lady that basically had a terminal diagnosis, and I was trying to say some things to her, and she said, are you saying I just need to have more faith? And I said, no, I'm not. And it's like you could see the shell come off, and then like the pain that was underneath it, because it was, I'm not trying to tell you just have faith and you'll be okay, but let's talk about the bigger picture of things. And then it opened up a door for actual, like a conversation where the Lord could actually minister. And so I think in situations where there is no this world reason for hope, it's the other thing. Apocalyptic literature is not escaping this world to get out. It's seeing the world to come and pulling that into this world.
I love that.
Here's our reason for hope. It's not based on our resources here. It's based on who the Lord is and what His end for us is. And because of that, I can start to pull that into my now and into your now.
And that's the kingdom of heaven is among you.
Yes.
The kingdom of heaven is advancing. The kingdom of heaven is accessible now, and let your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we are. We are ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
We are builders of the kingdom of God here and now.
Yes.
And yes, there is a time where there will be the final unveiling, where Christ himself will take up his seat and establish his throne forevermore. New heaven, new earth, all of those things. But between now and then, it's already begun. It's already at play.
Yes.
Oh, I love that, Dan. That's good. So just to finish the recap, talk about the song, talk about apocalyptic literature, and then I just grabbed these clear directions, that the angels were given Daniel, and I won't go too far into them, obviously, because we just did a whole message on them. But setting your heart to understand and humbling yourself before God, standing firm and then taking action and helping people understand, and turning many to righteousness. Those were the kind of the main points. And what I did, what was interesting is I didn't really think about this ahead of time. I just started looking for examples in my own life from this. I started pulling a bunch of examples from 2020, right? Because in some ways that was a bit apocalyptic for us. I mean, in no way on biblical standards, sure. But it was very disrupting, very revealing.
A situation where everything that you'd placed your hope in was no longer viable hope. Yep. So now it's, what do we place our hope in? Yep. So ripped raw and in an apocalyptic situation in that sense.
Yeah. So how was 2020 for you?
It wasn't too bad.
Dalton, how was 2020 for you?
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad.
Well, you held the whole church together because we went online, and you are the online guy.
No. I'm not. Alec is.
Well, he was the online pastor, but you're the online make it happen guy.
I guess so.
Communications, baby.
No, Nick Orso also shared that burden.
There was a number of people. I mean, we were coming on Sunday mornings. It was me coming with my message. It was Dalton and a few others in the sound booth, running the cameras, recording the thing, and then we always joke because your wife Ashley was behind the camera, so she was the only one that I was preaching to. She was the only one I could see while I was preaching. So for those maybe 2 months, 3 months maybe, I don't remember how long we did just online.
Yeah, that was a long series on John.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
but it was just and the sanctuary is empty. Actually, we had the homeless that were coming and they were using the courtyard to live stream the services and getting burritos afterwards. That was fun. Because we weren't here, so we said, "You guys want it?" They took it. So, yeah. But 2020, fascinating time. It's less than 4 years ago, even though it's 4 years ago.
Yeah, it lasted for a few years. Yeah. 2020 was a couple years long.
Yeah. But wow, it's just every once in a while wild to think that was in our day and our time. I mean, in the history books later on, they'll be writing a lot about that time in the world, let alone America, and. Yet here we are, still standing, and all these things that we learned from Daniel applied well in there, and apply well to whatever else might come. And one last little note is I really felt like we've been talking about the strange land, Babylon being the strange land, and in some ways, like an opposition culture. Mm-hmm. So opposition to people of God, opposition to our faith. Like the culture around us is not really promoting or building Christian faith in people these days. It actually seems to be more and more in opposition.
One way I've referred to it, or heard others even say it, is we're no longer the host of culture as the church. We're a guest in culture. Yeah. And so how do you live if you're the guest as opposed to the host?
Well, like minority culture.
Yeah.
Like definitely there's a minority culture reality, which is different. Mm-hmm. But we've been focusing on that, but I felt like the Lord said, don't forget to tell people it's not just the land of opposition. Mm-hmm. For Daniel in Babylon, and for many today, this is a land of affliction. So it's Daniel was in a place of opposition to faith and to God, but he was also in a place that was just agony. I mean, the siege that they went through, the slavery he was in, the loneliness. I mean, if the eunuch reality was part of that, it's a land of great affliction for mm-hmm. Daniel. And there are many people in our church and many people in our society who right now is not so much a land of that is strange, a culture that's strange to them, but it's a culture that's actually in a land that actually is painful for them. Mm-hmm. And even in our pastors' meeting today, we were praying. We had a little prayer time and praying for those who are grieving the loss of a loved one, praying those who are grieving broken relationships, praying for people who've lost some health reality. Lots of different grief going on, and so that these things still apply. All of this still applies, whether it's just a culture that's turned harsher to you, or literally you're just in agony.
Well, and I think some of the reality of apocalyptic literature, prophetic literature, is to free our imaginations, because we really live life through how we imagine things. And I'm not talking about make-believe, I'm talking about how we experience things. And if your imagination is crushed and you can't picture a good future, that's the definition of hope. And if you're in a place of great pain and you can't weep, sometimes it's because you can't imagine a good future. It's not safe enough to weep, because weeping is actually it's a cry that this is not the way things should be. And you have to have enough hope to weep And really Jeremiah as a prophet, known as the weeping prophet, where he's saying, get the most skilled weeping women around you, gather around, get in a circle, and soak the floor with your tears. Like he's trying to penetrate the numbness that's okay with the status quo. And so sometimes the prophetic literature, the apocalyptic literature, it's to give us a picture beyond the current so we can imagine something that's better than the situation we may have gone numb in, and so that we could weep again as a form of hope.
Beautiful, man. Yeah. I've run into some people. I don't know. I mean, I've had moments like that, but I remember in Ireland in particular, there was a pastor we were becoming friends with, and exactly that. He didn't know if he would ever feel okay again.
Yeah.
He couldn't imagine a time where he would have hope. Mm-hmm. He couldn't imagine a time where he would ever want to teach the Bible, or I mean, whatever that is. Cool to say it's been a year and he's teaching the Bible again, and he's fully alive again, which is cool. So if you're in that spot out there, take hope. One, Jesus knows exactly what to do and how to lead you out of the hole. But do reach out and get some help too from somebody. But okay, so now we're doing the deep dive to the stuff that was left out. Obviously 5 chapters I didn't touch on very much at all. But some fascinating stuff there. One for theologian, Bible scholars, endless amounts of fascinating material here. Even the Cat William crazy people out there, tons of information to work with on this. So just for little, whatever we are, simple seminary, wannabe, kind of, we scratch an itch a little bit here and there. But it's fun stuff for us too. And so I'll just go kind of through chapter by chapter. It's not necessarily chronological, but first we have Daniel's vision of the ram and the goat.
The ram and the goat, yes. So
give it to us.
So yes, the ram is basically representative of the Medo-Persian Empire. There's 2 horns coming up from the ram, but the second horn grows bigger, which would be the Persian is actually more powerful than the Medes. But then this goat comes flying across the land from the west. His feet don't even touch the ground. He's coming so fast. And he takes this ram that had kind of beat in every direction it wanted to and dominated every empire around it. And the goat takes down the ram and just dominates it, and no one can withstand the goat. And the goat grows a horn. And, the angel explains this, and, looking at history, I think people across the spectrum are pretty comfortable with, this is Alexander the Great. He conquers the world. Conquers the world at great speed. He's referred to as the son of Zeus. He takes the title King of Kings. He exalts himself pretty good, has the horn that grows, and then he dies suddenly, like it says he would. But then 4 horns grow in the place that come, the gathered from the winds of heaven. And, his empire did not pass to his children or to his child. It was divided up by his 4 generals. And that included, basically what becomes the Ptolemaic, the Seleucid Empire, 2 other empires that don't really become a big part of history. But with the Seleucid and Ptolemy, basically they take turns fighting, and, the exiles, once they return, they take turns kind of going, all right, we'll partner with the Seleucids to fight off the Ptolemaic Empire, and now the Seleucids are dominating and oppressing us, so now we'll go the other way. And basically, the 2 were just always clashing, and Israel was in the middle, or the Judeans were in the middle, getting bashed by it. And so the things that come in the chapters basically describe all these wars, and the king given in the south, king's daughter in the south given, which is basically Cleopatra, and all these alliances that are attempted and made, and the back and forth, and the devastating place it was, which really this is the seedbed for what, Jesus is born into. And, by that time it becomes Roman oppression. But it's describing all of that in amazing detail. But it's so bizarre. And it's bizarre. It's rams and goats and horns and actually, chapters
7 through 12 are not chronological as far as the visions comes. Because chapter 7, we get the ram and the goat. Chapter 11, we get the kings of the north and the south. And so they cover a time period, but you were kind of putting those two chapters together because it makes sense to do that, because of the kings of the north and the south really become the forefront of the prophetic scene, or the historical timeline and all of that. But again, exactly that. They're going to come to war this way, and then they're going to go fight back, and they're going to rise in strength, and then they're going to rise in strength, and then there's this daughter. And so the detail is just fascinating, which has made a lot of people who don't necessarily want to think the Bible's inspired by God to say Daniel could not have been written early, before these things. It had to have been written afterwards. What do you think about that?
There's a range of views on it, and whichever way it is, I'm okay with that. It's how it really is. I have no problem with God being able to speak the future through someone. Because of the nature of apocalyptic literature, and because we have other examples that are outside of Scripture, where you have the apocalypse of Abraham, you have the first Enoch, and things where you don't go, I really think Enoch wrote first Enoch, where you're taking a voice from the historical past to talk about the faraway future, which is really the current, and telling them, seal it up because it's for a much later time. From my standpoint, it's still the word of God and still speaking, whether it's Daniel telling it way in advance, if it's Daniel or someone else, collecting Daniel's things and putting it together in a way. It's the Lord that's at work in doing it, and it's the heavenly perspective. So, and it does include what's going to happen in the future. So even if it was more recent literature, it's something that's still going to happen in the future.
Have you dug into the more recent, like the later dating of it? Have you dug into that much?
I haven't done a ton of digging. It's funny because I was just, even before reading it, I was reading Gleason Archer, who's a very conservative, would very much be, it's predicting the future. He even gives a lot of detail on, why chapter 2 through 7 is in Aramaic, and then why Daniel switches back to Hebrew in chapter 8 and things like that. And then on the other side, John Goldengay, who's still fairly conservative, but would probably be coming more at it. He's not real bold one way or the other in terms of saying where he's at, but he's making space. And it has to do more with the nature of apocalyptic literature as a genre, as opposed to someone who says, well, it has to be recent because God can't predict the future or tell the future. Well, that's crazy. And I totally disagree with that. If it's someone going, this is God speaking his word through someone in a creative way, like that wouldn't bother me at all. So I'm open to either. I had a thought with that, but
I think that's good. I mean, I wrestled with that, earlier on as we were going through this, trying to unpack that. Just again, there's a lot of work that goes on before a message, so it has made it in a message, but it's kind of the foundational work that we're trying to get to make sure we get the right messages out of this. A little exegesis is the phrase, but I just, as I was diving into both arguments, to me there was a clear favorite. Even though, I think Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the right one. Mm-hmm. The idea that, someone could have written this after the fact, and like you said, used Daniel's name and collected Daniel's works and kind of published it in that way. That would be a very simple answer. So it's not like we need it to be before, otherwise it has no value. But as I was it just seemed like all the stretching was going on the later date as far as the earlier date, except it's just harder to believe that he could be so accurate and so specific in these things before. But, virgin birth, that's a little hard one to handle. And that was 600 years before Jesus was born of a virgin, so those specifics are not hard for God.
Well, and even the fact, I know I'm skipping ahead to chapter 9 a little bit, but in the 70 weeks, in the description of what the 70 weeks, the terminal point of those 70 weeks, there's some that would argue it's the 160 BC decade with Antiochus Epiphanes.
Hold on, before you, just do 70 weeks now, because that is the next one.
Okay.
So we got the ram and the goat, and we tackled the kings of the north and south, important. But now 70 weeks, which comes in Daniel chapter 9, which is so fascinating. So explain that a little bit.
So it's after Daniel's prayer where he's reading Jeremiah and saying, Lord, we have not been faithful.
He's understanding the actual time of captivity by reading, interpreting Jeremiah.
Yes.
Goes to pray.
Yeah, goes to pray and starts repenting, not saying, Lord, the people around me haven't repented. He's going, we have not been faithful, and big. Does it as a communal prayer as opposed to those people out there aren't listening, and starts praying. And, the basis for Lord, restore us is the mercy of God, and that he could rely on the mercy of God and say, this is the reason for my prayer, because you're merciful. And I think that's good news for all of us, because we could see our collective brokenness as a nation, as a people, and everything else. And instead of like, Lord, the nation around me has gone crazy, it's, Lord, we've missed it. Lord, we've not been faithful.
Lord, have mercy.
But your mercy is the basis for why we can pray and say, deliver us. So it starts with that, and then comes with the 70 weeks.
Determined upon Israel.
And yes. And so part of it is, so besides the 70 years, there's an intensification of the 70 years, which a lot of it's rooted in Leviticus 26 that talks about, the Sabbaths that you haven't kept and everything else, that, 7 times over, these will be visited on you. So 70 years becomes 490 years. And so the 70 weeks of 7 is the multiplying out of that 490 years. Things like Leviticus 26 would be a basis for that. And then it's, it specifically talks about from the decree to rebuild, it'll be 490 years. And if you pick like one option is when Ezra goes back and starts, his work. And the thing that the challenge with it is, in Ezra, there's no decree to rebuild. It's Ezra's there doing his work. But if you're going, well, it's metaphorical building, then okay, that could work. So that's a possibility. And that one ends with a date of about 30 AD, which is a good possible date for the resurrection of Jesus, or death and resurrection of Jesus.
Or the entry into the like Passion Week kind of deal.
The Passion Week, yeah. Did you not know today, like Jerusalem, you didn't know today was the day of your visitation. So there's good reasons to see.
There's some meat on those bones.
There's meat on those bones for sure. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that in 168, it all terminates in what happens in Antiochus Epiphanes, because there is an abomination of desolation that's referred to as that, when he puts an altar or an idol of Zeus in the temple, sacrifices a pig, and basically the temple has to be cleansed, and there's everything that happens in
Maccabean revolt,
the Maccabean revolt, everything that happens around that. You could apply a lot of, if not all of, you could make a reason for why that all applies there. But then there's a lot that you could go, this goes even further beyond that and has to be the end of time. Because
nothing quite fits perfectly.
Nothing quite fits perfectly. And in everything, you're sort of stretching and making it work, and it can, but there's a lot of, well, if you take it this way. And so I think that's the beauty of apocalyptic literature. You don't get Alexander the Great came, it's a goat came. And here's how this could apply beyond just Alexander, because it's
Don't
the
focus
symbols.
On the goat, though.
Don't focus on the goat, but focus on the representative kind of nature of a thrashing goat and ram and all of those things. And one way to describe it is there's a surplus of meaning. And so it's so loaded that it speaks. And not only does it speak in 168, it speaks in 30 AD. It speaks towards where we're ultimately going. So instead of having to pick one and fight for your timeline, and this is the reason why, this is how it works here. And if it was for 168 AD, here's Jesus picking it up and talking about the abomination of desolation. And that may be referring to 70 AD, when the Romans come with their eagle standards and desecrate the temple and destroy it. Or it may be talking future still. And it's kind of it's a way that's open to speak to the future still, in terms of what God's ultimately going to do.
Yeah, I like it. The actual verse from Daniel 9 says, 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. So that's the whole point of it. So Daniel, you're praying, you're repenting, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That God is going to finish transgression, put an end to sin, atone for iniquity, bring everlasting righteousness, seal both vision and prophet. It's an interesting phrase. And anoint a most holy place. And so I speaking to Daniel, who's seen the most holy place that he can think of desecrated, by the Babylonians, having himself have vision and prophet and being totally a bit bewildered and maybe a little anxious from all this stuff, he's saying it's going to seal up, which takes us to Daniel 12 a little bit too. But the main thing is that God's doing, all of this stuff is to get rid of sin, to atone for iniquity and bring in everlasting righteousness. And that's a theme within Daniel that picks up in chapter 12 as well, like, turning sinners to righteousness. You'll be shining like the stars of heaven. So I love that. And I mean, the idea that, 490 years from the return, from some part of the return, because there were really waves of return, right? There was Zerubbabel, which even came before Ezra and is in the book of Ezra, but he doesn't get his own book, And then Nehemiah, there's a clear decree, where you can go, but he goes back to rebuild the wall. So, but somewhere in that process, it's almost like some sort of prophetic calendar starts, and whether that's the only one leading to Jesus, we know that Jesus, obviously was a huge part of doing exactly what was decreed upon him, and I think it's interesting too that is focused on Israel, because Israel, from the biblical perspective, Israel is almost like the focus of the prophetic timeline, and even still today, like it's not God used Israel as a prophetic kind of timeline or a chosen people, and now he doesn't anymore. He still has a plan for Israel. Israel still is. So whenever there is trouble in Israel, I think it does kind of heighten our prophetic sense a little bit to kind of go, okay, Lord, what are you up to? And so I think that's just, that verse specifically points it to Israel, points it towards ending transgression, bringing in righteousness, and specifically anointing a holy place, which hopefully is New Jerusalem. We're kind of working towards that. And so that's 70 weeks. Fascinating study, deep waters there to think through. And then I think after that, the last thing we were supposed to talk about was Daniel chapter 12. Prince of Persia. We got to jump on that thing real quick. So in Daniel 10, Daniel is praying again, and he gets some visions that are troubling, but an angel shows up. You want to tell us about what happened there?
So the angel shows up and says, from the time you started to pray,
21 days earlier,
I was already on the move.
I was coming.
But the Prince of Persia opposed me.
Hold up. What?
Yeah.
What do you mean Prince of Persia?
And
oppose the angel?
Oppose the angel.
What?
And there's different ways to look at it. It's funny, this would lead to a Chronicles of Narnia thing that I really like.
Oh, yeah.
But there's this place in Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9 that talks about God basically taking his inheritance as Israel, and basically the nations get left to the gods. But the plan always was that Israel, as God's faithful servant, would be a light to the nations and bring back the nations as his complete inheritance, because Israel was called, what were they called for? Not just themselves,
Ask and I'll give the nations to you.
Give you the nations as an inheritance. Yep. And so this seems to be a picture of there are principalities, powers, things involved in a spiritual setting that really do have effect, and that's what's being played out in the book of Daniel. Is
so you're telling me that God has angels that he sends on tasks to give messages, angel, messenger, and sometimes when God does that, those angels or those messages or whatever that is gets interrupted or has some sort of challenge with some sort of demonic type being.
Something like that, where,
that is actually assigned to a certain region and is called the Prince of Persia. Like it has some sort of dominion over, like this is our airspace.
It would appear to be that way.
Come on! Cat Williams, where you at?
The biblical picture of the world has a very busy spiritual world involved, and there's
active.
Even like I think you and I have talked about before in John, where it talks about now is the time, now is the hour for the prince of this world to be cast out, or the ruler of this world to be cast out. And there's a typical, Book of John double entendre going on where it's like, wait, it actually says ekbalo, which is the Greek word usually used for casting out demons. And everyone knew at the time of Jesus, when Jesus is praying that, the ruler of this world was Tiberius Caesar. But it's also said in such a way where it's not just Tiberius Caesar, it's the power behind Tiberius Caesar. And at a certain point, we all can become, if we give ourselves over to, we can become pawns of other spiritual forces. We can be puppets. We can be pawns, puppets.
Well, and you said if we give ourselves over.
Yes.
But I think the truth is that until we're controlled by the Spirit,
yes,
we are controlled by the anti-Spirit.
Yes.
Which another word for is anti-Christ.
Sure. Yeah.
Which makes people jump in a whole different ways. But it's true that there are powers that are pulling the strings, in particular of empires. Right? Because Persia was an empire that Daniel was living in. And there was a prince that was somehow a prince of Persia that was holding back the angel from getting the message of God to Daniel, who lived in Persia at the time.
Yes.
So I'm going to say something, and you just tell me how crazy I sound. So we live in a place called America, and we pray to God, who's not American, who's up and outside of all of that, and we say, God, please, help our nation turn to you. Help these people turn to you. Help Arizona turn to you. Help our governor turn to you. Help my kids and my families turn to you. So we're praying all these prayers, and so God hears and sends his answer, his message, his messenger, some sort of angel to come and bring that message to us, or to bring that into reality. And that angel could very well run into the Prince of America, which is some demonic kind of entity that has dominion over America.
It's funny because I never thought of putting it in terms of that. And there's realities, but from the standpoint of when Paul says we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual forces in dark places, it's not just a nice thing to say that sounds very spiritual. It's the reality of what you just described, like whether it's called the Prince of America or whatever reality that is, that, there is a reality that there are spiritual forces that we are engaging with, that, are active around us. And that's why prayer matters. That's why, we seek the Lord as the one who delivers us and does these things. And ultimately we want people delivered out of the grip of the power of the evil one or evil ones. And the only power those things have is whatever is given over to it. And the only way to get free is the worship of the one true God. And it's not that I love, like different people have said it, but Tim Keller would say, there aren't two kinds of people, those who worship and those who don't. Everybody worships. It's just what do you worship? And if you worship non-God things, like Psalm 115 and Psalm 135 both talk about we become like the God we worship. And those things are subhuman, and our humanity starts to deconstruct, and we can actually dehumanize other people, dehumanize ourselves if we worship things that aren't the living God. But if we worship the living God, then we're free. And so we're ironically, a slave, a servant, an eved, worshiping the one true God. So the only way to be free is to serve. And if you serve, because he's the only one that truly loves you and truly is the source of life. Something's
pulling the strings.
Yes.
And there's only two options.
Yes.
Spirit of God or anti-spirit of God.
Yes. Yes. And there's, and some of the challenges, how do you describe evil? Like we'd want to, you could take apart a car engine and go, this is how it works. You can't really break down evil into constituent parts and be like, this is how it works, but you can see its impact. You can see it working. And the Chronicles of Narnia thing would be that in the voyage of the Dawn Treader, when they're out traveling,
on the boat.
So the king has rightfully been put back on the throne. The rightful king of Narnia is now on the throne. And because of that, now they're traveling to lands that should properly be Narnian lands and putting them back in right relationship to the king. And so, at Jesus, crucifixion on the cross, the king, and his resurrection and ascension, the king is on the throne. And now our role is going to lands that should be rightfully under him and putting them back in their right place with him. And so, and it talks about death
kinda
being
like
the last.
Juneteenth a little bit.
Juneteenth?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Well, slavery was abolished.
Got it, but not everybody.
But not everybody knew.
Yes.
And so there were people who carried that message to slaves to say,
yes.
hey,
that's a very good
you're
example.
free.
Yeah.
You're free. And they didn't even know.
Yes.
But like they had already been set free, but they didn't even know.
Yeah. And so in 1 Corinthians 15, it's like, until the last enemy is put under the feet, this is the role, this is what we're up to, this is what Jesus is up to, and what we're following him in.
So, that's good, but what are this? How come there's still the Prince of America or the Prince of Persia, and why? What are they? They're just making it hard on us.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it's fascinating. That little glimpse into prayer, something that little kids do. Grandma's out there doing all the time.
Yeah.
There was so much more going on to prayer than we fully understand.
Right.
We get that little glimpse. Daniel starts praying. 21 days later, God, where you been at? What's the deal? How come He gets an answer, and the angel's like, look, I jumped 21 days ago.
Yeah.
The minute you prayed, heaven moved. Your prayers activated heaven. But I ran into a little bit of a conflict with the Prince of Persia, and I was stuck, and I could not get free, which is not... It's a little disconcerting. But then, was it Gabriel or Michael?
Michael.
Oh, yeah, Michael's the fighter, huh? So the angel Michael came and basically took down the Prince of Persia enough for the angel to get through.
Did I get that wrong? It was Michael, and Gabriel was the one that came and helped.
I don't know.
I need to go read it again.
Yeah. One of those two.
Yeah.
These are some serious, cool angels up there. But yeah, so spiritual reality, I think, Revelation talks about when the prayers of the saints are offered up, God silences heaven for the space of a half hour. And then when that incense, those prayers reach the throne, it says lightnings and thunders start bursting out of there. I love that picture of prayer. And yeah, so keep praying, everybody.
And I guess, bottom line is we're not going through life unopposed, so we shouldn't expect to be unopposed. Yeah. And, there's even things, and I think it's 1 Timothy, arm yourself with this attitude. Those who desire to live a righteous life in Christ are going to go through some stuff. There's going to be some challenge to it, but don't be afraid. Yeah,
though in Daniel 10, I believe it talks about the wise, and let me just see if it talks about the wise. The wise will be the ones who turn many to righteousness. But then it also says, but the wise are going to suffer captivity, they're going to suffer plunder, they're going to suffer, under the sword. And it says, but they will receive a little help. It's like, what do you mean little help? Don't give me that little help. Yeah. I think that's just a funny verse, but it's true. God is our Savior. That doesn't mean he's going to save us from all suffering. It means he will save us from all unnecessary, unredemptive suffering. And ultimately, he's saving us from everlasting suffering. But God, just like as a grown-up, it would be foolish of you to make sure your kid never, ever has to go through something hard. Yeah. There would be no development, there'd be no growth, there'd be no maturity. And so God, he's okay with us going, but no needless. None of it will be needless or not redemptive. So last thing for us is Daniel chapter 12. He gets another vision of an angel. So he's whacked out in some ways. He's kings of north, horns and rams and goats and prince of Persia. Whoa, 70 weeks. He's just all these visions out there crazy. And then in Daniel chapter 12, an angel shows up and he's on one side of the riverbank and he sees what's on the other side of the riverbank. And the angel says what?
I forget.
Seal it up.
Yeah, seal it up for a future time.
Seal it up.
For the distant future.
Seal it up.
Don't worry. And yes, yeah.
I think that's so funny. It's like, well, then why'd you tell me all this stuff? Yeah. But the message there is that seal it up, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to know that those who turn sinners to righteousness will shine like the stars forevermore.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so the message is, Daniel, it doesn't matter what perspective you have. It doesn't matter how chaotic or not chaotic, you still have the same job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to basically right the wrongs.
Yes.
In as much as you can, find things in the world that are wrong and make them right, which kind of goes back to your Narnia thing a little bit.
Yeah, and even, connecting the shining like stars to Abraham, like, hey, I'm going to bless you, and through you, all the families and nations of the earth are going to be blessed, and you'll be as the stars. And I think a lot of translations will like as numerous as the stars, but a lot of times it's you will be as the stars.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's actually looking at this is what your calling is to be. And so Daniel's picking up on that, or even Paul when talks about do all things without grumbling and complaining so that you may become blameless and pure children in a crooked generation, that you may shine like stars in the universe. It's all going back to that. Hey, God called a family, Abraham. The rescuers were in need of rescuing. Through Jesus, we're brought into that family to shine like stars in the universe, to be his people that step into that vocation, which is to bring all lands back under the dominion of Jesus, because he's the one that actually cares.
Yeah, salt and light, city on a hill. I mean, that's Jesus, his analogies, right?
Yes.
He said, my people who follow me, Sermon on the Mount,
Yes.
they're going to be salt, they're going to be light, they're going to be like a city on a hill. And it's kind of the same little bit of reference. Daniel, you just keep walking in righteousness, and not just try and make yourself righteous,
right,
but try and actually bring righteousness into the world, bring justice into the world. Find something that's unjust and bring justice to it. Find someone who's heading in the wrong direction, help them head in the right direction. And what you're doing is you're being salt, bringing some cleansing and preserving. You're being light, which you're bringing some guidance and some joy and all of that. And you're a city on a hill. And I love the city on the hill thing, because in some ways, sometimes that's all we can do is just be a city on the hill and hope that at one point someone will get so sick of their sinful darkness, and then they'll look and they'll go, well, what is that? Like, I know what sin and darkness is. I know what this does, but that looks different. And they'll be able to come and find the light of Christ.
Yeah.
So, well, that's Daniel. That's Daniel from Daniel and David. Remember Dan and Dave?
Yes,
the Olympics?
Dan and Dave. Yes, because my brother is David. So that's, but yeah, Dan and Dave. Who's going to win? Dave's ex-girlfriend. Definitely Dan. It's
the commercials.
Like that.
They ran a bunch of commercials about Dan and Dave. How did they do in the Olympics? One of them did well, one of them didn't, right?
I don't remember which did. It was the decathlon. Weren't they both decathletes? It was
probably David, not Daniel.
Probably
not. What are you guys talking about?
This is the old school Olympics.
It was called the
80s,
90s?
Yeah, 90s. There was two guys that were in the Olympics named, one was Dave and one was Dan. And so to promote the Olympics, they had Dave and Dan doing a lot of things.
Competing at everything.
Yeah, and anyways, Olympics are coming up this summer, right?
Right,
in
France.
In Paris. I also heard that our VBS this year, it's the theme is scuba, and so Ryan and Nick Orso, they always do a skit, and they're going to be they're going to be scuba divers, French
scuba
diver explorers.
Oui.
Pierre and Jacques, I think, are their
just
things.
Something
little Jacques
probably
Cousteau type
incredibly
stuff.
offensive
it's gonna
to
be
a people group.
Hilarious. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But thank you so much for your time, Dan. Thank you, Dalton, for being the backseat driver. And hopefully one day you'll get to ride in a Cybertruck like me. Have you?
It's okay. No, but like I've seen them in the wild. I saw one at Home Depot.
They're happening.
They're cool looking. The only thing is have you seen like the finger smash thing that like is going viral?
No.
So like the software on them. So yeah,
Uh-oh.
It'll like the door is supposed to like sense that your finger is there and then like open, but it's like not doing that. So people's fingers are getting like smashed in the door.
So they're actually like saying, watch this, and their fingers getting smashed.
Yeah. Like customers are.
Instead of like they wouldn't
also,
put their finger there.
There's been a huge recall on a lot of them too. Yeah, Elon's. God bless his heart. That's all I gotta say.
It's a weird looking truck. My wife thinks it's the coolest thing ever.
I do too. I'm with Brittany. I
don't know, man. I don't know.
It just It looks so cool.
You like them, Dan?
I think they look weird, but I think they're kind of okay because they look weird. I don't know.
You know what would have been cool is if I would have had one of those on stage while we were going through apocalyptic literature.
Yeah, try to... Who's paying for that? Try to explain that one to the congregants. I was writing
in one the other day, so
I know.
I'm basically rich enough. Yeah. Well, anyways, we could talk nonsense for a lot longer, but we'll wrap this baby up. And thank you so much for listening in. We'd love for you to share, to like, to do all of those type of things for this podcast. We're hearing some good things. Let us know anything that stood out to you, and or even if you have some things you want us to talk about, or random questions for Dalton. We'll have a whole little segment, backseat driver Dalton questions. But with that being said, God bless you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dalton.
Thank you.
We out.